Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of Rimworld Odyssey with the spacefaring Stars of Som. Last time we left off after giving our pawns a brief vacation on the beach before we then set out to explore the site of a frozen terraformer harboring another grav core. That grav core was quickly obtained from one of the first rooms we encountered frozen beneath the ice here. However, there is still much more left to explore, not only inside this facility but also in what looks to be another one over on the right. To get us started though, let's apply a tech print we recently picked up. Nelgrav can now gain some intellectual experience and unlock specialized limbs for research. The experience gain, however, does not really move the needle for him anymore. At a skill level of 17, he is only outclassed by River. As you can see, we also have our Itakin Reno smelt down some mechanoid slag chunks I found near our landing site, and using one of the two grav cores we currently have, we are now going to construct a grav core power cell. This is essentially a free source of energy. Once constructed, this power cell will put out a steady 1200 watts, certainly not an overwhelming amount, but definitely enough to ensure that our grav ship's basic facilities can keep running. Now, with the frozen terraformer on this map destroyed, outside temperatures have also risen again. Unfortunately, the snow and ice around us do not seem to melt anytime soon, but we can safely bring out our hydroponics basins to grow another batch of rice. At night then, we sent a scouting party into the grav core complex. The recently recruited Fabian joins Alex, Saber and Kyler, who immediately encounter more resistance behind the next door here. Now, it is just a lone hunter drone, but we want to make sure it does not blow up the fuel tanks in this room. Thankfully, Saber's shield belt is enough to tank the damage, even though the drone's spikes still get through to her. The next room then unfortunately awaits us with a very similar setup, so we destroy some of the ice in here for a more direct path towards the drone, and then we once again have Saber lure it away from the explosives. No further damage is taken, we can now get our hands on a component box. Fabian also successfully hacks another security door inside the complex, a complex that we soon discover to be much larger than we initially anticipated. The area we just cleared might just be 1/4 of the entire thing. As you can see, there's also more defenses in the corridor up ahead. Let's leave those be for the moment, although we quickly discover that behind the security door here, there's only ice. So we head on down to the southwestern quadrant of the facility. The first room here is empty, the next one contains a turret in the top left corner. Thankfully, it does not have line of sight towards the component box here, so Kyler can quickly open that. Before we then look for a way south, we will leave the turret blocking the security door be for the moment. Alex then opens the door all by herself, a bit hasty perhaps, because we have another sentry drone hiding behind it, so we need to scramble to regroup and get our pawns into a fighting position. Luckily, Alex's shield belt blocks any damage for now. As we have learned over the course of the last episode though, these sentry drones are not overly sturdy. They do have some decent firepower though, especially against unarmored pawns, and so our new recruit Fabian suffers a brutal gunshot wound to his left leg. In combination with Saber also being a bit bruised, I think this calls for a brief break in the action, at least for the two of them. Alex and Kyler keep exploring for just a little while longer. The next room here then contains a wasp trap, but also 3 sealed crates promising treasure, and I think the 3 wasp drones here we can take even with only 2 pawns. They are fairly squishy targets, even if Alex is going to suffer some damage in the process. Once the drones are down, we then get our hands on the contents of the crates. All 3 of them contain grav light panels, which is fitting I guess, considering this facility's main loot was the grav core. While Alex and Kyler now haul those back to the grav ship, our injured rest up in the hospital. As you can see, Saber makes a very quick recovery, and can therefore now begin tending to Fabian. Our young Dr. Furian seems otherwise occupied at the moment. Now, while Brian and Reno lead our animals to greener pastures on the other side of the grav ship, Saber, Kyler and Brent are on their way back into the frozen facility. Along the way, Saber unfortunately suffers a withdrawal-related breakdown. She is thankfully in an area that we already cleared. Let's hope she stays there and does not wander into any turret's line of fire. This also means that a not entirely healthy Alex needs to reinforce our scouting party. As you can see, we have 2 more rooms on the right here, one with a turret in the lower left corner. We're not going to mess with that just yet though. Instead, we have Alex clear out into the hunter trap and then look into the door on the left. Even more defenses in this one. A wasp trap right next to the entrance leaves us no choice but to activate it. Once more though, the drones are quickly taken down. We then proceed to hack 2 ancient blast doors simultaneously. Brent finishes first, but we open the other one instead. It looks to me though as if we've reached another exterior wall here. Beyond the doors we only find solid ice. So we keep exploring, only to find another turret right behind the next door here. So instead of opening doors, let's clear away some ice. This does reveal another ancient blast door, but you can probably already guess what we're going to find beyond. Now, in order to deal with all of those turrets, I brought in Brian and Thrumbo Terror Kittens. We just need to position Brian very close to a turret on the other side of a wall. Our Alpha Thrumbo then takes care of the rest. And Terror Kittens is in fact sturdy enough to clear out the entire facility that way. One thing that is not quite so sturdy meanwhile is our recently acquired triple rocket launcher, so we give no room for another one of River's teenage tantrums and have Itakin Reno imprison her before she can destroy it. Back inside the Graph Core complex, meanwhile, Terror Kittens clears out turret after turret. The mighty animal is certainly also taking a mighty beating doing so, but at least for the moment, Terror Kittens is not in any danger. Just as we find a small secret passage then, Kyla suffers a mental break of her own, and while she now wanders off, we also have a door opening and something shooting at us. Looks like we've stumbled upon yet another sentry drone. To make matters even worse, Terror Kittens also does not seem to be overly eager to help out, instead rushing towards another turret at the other end of the facility. With that turret destroyed, we can then finally focus on the sentry drone. At this point, Terror Kittens is also looking rough, but the robot quickly goes down, and with that, the area is cleared, at least for the moment. At this point, we sent Brent and Brian back to the Graph ship. Both of them have suffered some injuries, not to mention that our Alpha Thrumbo also needs urgent medical care. One pawn who has fully recovered from her injuries, meanwhile, is Deborah here. We acquired her in the last episode and will now put her to work at the art bench, where she's now going to make a few small sculptures out of jade that we have plenty of. Furion meanwhile takes care of Terror Kittens and swiftly stabilizes the animal. And unfortunately, we also have to take note of the fact that Alex here suffered a stab scar to her right eye, so having her deal with all of those wasp drones was perhaps not the best idea after all. Brent then also suffers what I consider to be an easily avoidable mental break because he is currently not Terror Kitten's master. Well, at the very least, this gives us the Catharsis mood bonus in a few hours. River then loots a medicine pallet that we walked by earlier, and we are also informed of a lone mad raccoon attacking our people. Not really a threat we need to take overly serious though. A few hours later then, we sent Fabian, Alex and Kyla back into the Graph Core complex because of this right here, sealed crates hidden beneath the ice. A faint yellowish glow gives them away even from the outside. The first one here contains 7 Glitter World medicine, the other one a bunch more Graph Light panels. We also mine out a hidden part of the chamber in the lower right corner here. This reveals one more sentry drone, most likely the last one inside of the complex, and this time we've brought enough firepower to make quick work of it. At this point then, we can safely leave the place be for good. There is also nothing hiding behind the door over here, just more ice, and so we jump to Deborah, who has finished her first jade sculpture, named Needy Father, and depicting an empty tube. We also receive a quest here to potentially fight 2 groups of Itakin raiders. However, we are not really all that well equipped for that at the moment, and the rewards here will sadly also only be given once we have defeated them both. So I would say we'll just keep going with business as usual, and in this case that includes hunting. We've got a couple of ibex near where we've hitched our animals, and some musk oxen a bit further north as well. At night then, we send out another small scouting party, this time to investigate some other ruins beneath the ice. Thankfully, we only have a single hunter drone in this one, nothing that Saber's shield belt can't absorb. Sadly, the loot is equally limited, just a single component box, and all other doors here only lead towards more ice, so this is in fact the whole extent of it. Back to the gravship then, where on the next morning we have cargo pods coming in. Inside, some packaged survival meals. We'll gladly add them to our storage. Reno then continues to work on converting Deborah to the Stars of Som. She is the only crew member currently not part of the ideology, but seeing how quickly he makes progress, that will soon change. We then also have what I believe is our very first trade ship passing by. Sadly, there's nothing crazy good on offer, so we just end up selling some luciferium, a biomutation pulsar, and a Grasslands seed we picked up on one of the earlier maps. Shortly after then, it's time for the rice harvest, and that likely also signals the end of our stay here. Sadly, we did not quite manage to get all plants to grow to full maturity, but I also don't really want to spend another day here waiting for just a few dozen extra units of rice. And so, as the evening nears, we get ready for liftoff once more. We remove the hitching spot here to allow our animals to graze freely and to fill up their bellies before we leave, before we then officially command the Hisa Mark II to launch once more. As usual, our chickens are the last animals to make it on board, and for our next destination we have our eyes firmly set on plasteel. As you can see, there are two ancient quarries nearby that are both rich in plasteel. Flying in that direction will also bring us closer to another grav core site. However, our fuel only lasts us as far as this little island here, so that is exactly where we will go. So here we are, hopefully in for a few days of peace and quiet. As you can see, we've landed in the lower right corner of the map, which features gold, steel, components and yes, also some compacted plasteel. The rest of it is mostly ocean. So let's get to it. As always, we lead our animals out to graze, but immediately afterwards we are struck by disease. Cat and Brian come down with malaria. This is unfortunate, but with the right treatment certainly not life-threatening, and made up for by the fact that we have an exotic goods trader coming in, and one member of their caravan is none other than Brian's brother. Now of course we're not going to capture him, even though there seems to be a spot among our crew just opening up, as young River, one of the first pawns we ever recruited, has officially given up. Now, once more, we could capture her and force her to stay, but I don't think that's what we're going to do. We took her in as a young teenager, and now that she's an 18-year-old adult, I think she's free to make her own choices, even if those choices now cost us our pilot and most capable researcher. Still, if she wishes to pursue her own path, then that's what it's going to be. If the tales of Maniac have told us one thing over the years, we might just see her again at some point. Her spot at the research bench, meanwhile, will now be taken over by Fabian. Unfortunately, he's only got a level 7 intellectual skill. Brent would actually be a better candidate, but he's also our main crafter, and those two roles typically don't mix well. Now, at this point then, with some rain setting in, let's send Reno out to meet the trade caravan. As you can see, the inventory is somewhat limited though, and we only end up purchasing the fast healing gene pack. The caravan also shares with us some intel on a lost chem fuel refinery. On the world map here we can see that it's actually not too far away. Still, I'm not entirely sure whether it's worth the travel. With Saber starting to mine plasteel, the rest of our pawns are already busy chopping wood, and we should get a decent haul of chem fuel off of that alone. In the evening then, the trade caravan with Brian's brother in it leaves. It's a bit unfortunate, I think, that the game does not really give you any sort of special interactions with these kind of pawns. I think it would have been nice if the two of them could have at least had a short conversation. Either way, the night remains uneventful, and on the next morning, you can see it, we continue working on the grav ship, the Hisa Mark II. We have acquired a decent chunk of grav light panels and will now put them to work, mostly to slightly extend the ship's rear, and we should be able to create enough space with this to finally plop down some hydroponics basins inside the ship. While the whole construction process is still going on, Fabian and Nelgraf successfully unlock recon armor, and I think we're going to manufacture a few suits of it ourselves soon. For a bit more firepower then, let's look into some advanced turrets, beginning with the rocket swarm launcher, a fantastic weapon against larger groups of enemies with weak protection, like tribals for example. A short while later then, we witness young Cat celebrating her 10th birthday, and we did actually end up reaching growth tier 8 with her this time around, so we give her the jogger trait as well as passions in mining, shooting and crafting. Her shooting skill in particular is already looking decent, and we can always use more capable fighters. We are at this point then also informed that the Hisa Mark II is ready to be launched again, but we still have a bit more work to do until we can lift off. Saber also has another mental break because she's still suffering from psychite withdrawal. I'm still not entirely sure if I really want her to beat the addiction. Since Nelgraf has a genetic psychite dependency, we need some form of steady supply soon anyway. On the other hand, I really like the idea of Saber using her time on board to get clean. On the next morning then, we are informed of the location of yet another Graph core, this one however hiding out in orbit on an abandoned orbital platform, and conveniently enough also not too far away from our current location. Now, as you can see, the Hisa's overhaul is starting to take shape. I have already reserved a location for a small shuttle bay, and as I had hoped, we now also have enough space to put down a few hydroponics basins. My idea for the moment would be to just remove the roof above these whenever we land, otherwise we would probably need to invest into 2 sun lamps, and for the amount of crops we can grow here, that energy consumption would be just a bit too high. A few hours later, and we've also relocated our workshop area a bit. All the necessary facilities are now in place, and with that I think we're pretty much done here, but maybe it's best if we spend another night before we lift off on the next morning. During that night, we then gather a few more materials. We have a small gold vein nearby and also some steel and components, and it would feel a bit wasteful if we just left them here without taking what we can. Nonetheless, it is soon time to lift off, now with 2 new pilots, Brent at the helm and Fabian as his co-pilot, and for our destination I think we will in fact take a closer look at the ancient chem fuel refinery here, and I'm hoping that we'll leave with more chem fuel than we used to get there. So here we are, the refinery is right in front of us and we will waste no time exploring it. Room number 1 only has a steel scrap box inside of it. Room number 2 meanwhile awaits us with defenses. A hunter drone is quickly dispatched off, but there's also a turret still waiting for us, so once more we send in our Alpha Thrumbo Terror kittens to take care of it. In the next room then, we find plenty of chem fuel on shelves in the back, but also another hunter trap. Alex's shield belt has fully recharged those, so this shouldn't be a problem. Speaking of problems, this one might be a bit of trouble. Looks like we've got a psychic ship coming our way, crashing down to the northwest of our landing site and accompanied by plenty of scythers. Let's hope it doesn't cause too many mental breaks before we can leave again. Thankfully, the drone's intensity starts off as low. Alex and her exploration party meanwhile discover a few more chem fuel canisters. The last room here meanwhile contains 4 biofuel refineries, but with limited space available on our graph ship, I think the one we already have will be enough. The small storehouse to the south of the main facility then has a bit more chem fuel in it. In total, I believe we gained about 600 to 700 units from visiting this site, about 3 times the amount we spent to get here, and with what we already have, likely enough to fill both of our chem fuel tanks to the max. Up next then, as Alex starts removing the roof above our hydroponics basins, Reno successfully converts Deborah, and with that, all crew members on board of the Hisa are once again believers in the Stars of Som. In the evening then, we begin sowing out new plants, and this time we are going for a full batch of psychoid. Food I think we can reliably obtain from hunting. The drugs meanwhile sadly don't grow on trees. In the middle of the night then, as we watch Brent take care of some mining, we have a war merchant trade caravan pass by. Unfortunately though, they are tribals without anything interesting, so we just end up selling them a few unwanted items. Afterwards then, it's time to upgrade the Hisa's defenses. We are now putting down a few more turrets, and while we do, we also have a group of rare thrumbos wander onto the map. Let's keep those in mind for hunting or potential taming purposes. For now, our defensive upgrades take priority. Eventually then, we have a grand total of 7 mini-turrets on each side of the entrance, so 14 in total, and we're now scheduling the construction of 2 autocannon turrets as well. Now, we are at this point consuming steel a bit faster than we can mine it, so construction of the first turret here only finishes early on the next morning. A few hours later, we are then also informed that the gravship is ready to be launched again, although we will not be able to lift off until Saber here finishes her mental break. We also successfully complete researching the rocket swarm launcher, potentially an upcoming addition to our defensive installment. Let's grab the uranium slug turret next, just in case we need something a bit more convincing. For today then, I think we have somewhat improved the Heeser's defensive capabilities, and I'm itching to test those out in combat, something we've been mostly shying away from up until this point. So perhaps in the next episode we can do some larger scale fighting. Until then, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course also go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!